Okay. So, first question. Does anyone want to ask the first question, or should I just take it over? Okay, I'll ask it. So, based on your experience, Vansilli, how important are observers to casting? I think there's always kind of like sometimes it's really hard to grasp. Like if I'm observing, sometimes I wonder, oh, why am I observing? You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
So, can you explain to us like your view on how observers impact your casting as an individual and impact the production by consequence?
I think that observing is 100% important to my casting if I'm a play-by-play caster, because it definitely helps me in terms of painting the picture and explaining the storyline. There was so we just did the Valorant Elite Showdown over the past weekend, and I was actually doing play-by-play, going back to play-by-play when I'm usually a color guy, and Dust was my color guy. And at the end of day one, I actually had a bit of feedback for the production team, and when I realized after actually is not really on also the observer, but also on I guess the main director, the one that's going to be switching the feeds so that we get the right action as well, right? So as I play by play, for example, I remember there was this one round on Ascent where I know that the Jet is about to pop her Blade Storm on defense on A side and do a double updraft on top of Generator to try to get a knife kill of her Blade Storm in Gelato. And she did get it, but we missed it. So when we missed it, I was able to say, "Oh my god, I know that was a nice shot because I saw that coming by looking at the minimap and understand that that action was going to happen with the blade storm that was about to pop off." Um, and I know that it happened because I was able to see it from the kill feed. But myself as a play-by-play, I had to explain a little bit why that kill was good because it wasn't caught on camera, and that I don't know if it was on the play-by-play observer or the POV observer that didn't catch it, or if it was the producer that didn't do the switch correctly. But I'm assuming at this point now is that it was a because you have a free float, a free cam observer, and you have a POV observer, right? One that's going to be floating around, one that's going POV. And when we're actually into the round, we were in a POV of someone. So I would assume that it was unfortunately a POV that was missed. And that in itself, I'm still able to catch and explain it, but it also does take away of how nice that kill could have been, or how hyped that kill could have been uh, if we actually caught it on camera, right? And I think that's why it's really really important also as a play to or as an observer, sorry, to be maybe one step ahead of the play-by-play commentators so that um, they're going to be following the next point of action that allows the play-by-play to say the next point of the storyline. And the way that I see it when it comes down to when I cast, for example, even as a color commentator, it always starts off with like a setup, an initial point of action where you're looking at what utility is available and what utility might come into play in the first seconds of the round, where that main focus of the action is going to be. Then after that initial action, then it goes potentially back to two scenarios. One, it's going to be a full execution into the site where everybody does an incredible job in terms of catching the action. If not, it's going to go back into a default where you're trying to pull out rotations, trying to rotate back onto the other side, and now you want to try to catch how are they making their opponents rotate? Why are they rotating for? And then where is the next point of action of where it's going to be? And then it goes back into this roller coaster of like, okay, next point of action after this kill, does it become another small lull and dull moment where there's going to be more rotations, or is there going to be an execution at that play at that kill? And I noticed that by looking at the rest, like when that kill happens, what happens on the rest of the minimap? How are people reacting to that? Let's say it's an attacker that gets a kill on A side of Haven and everybody's set up on C. Is everybody rotating back to the A site, or is everybody on defense rotating to the A site, and the people on the attack on C site are going for a full exec, and they make it into an open site? So all these kinds of things are always going through my mind when I'm actually observing a game as a color commentator. Whereas now it's a little bit harder as an observer in my eyes because you're thinking the same questions, but now you have to make the executive decision as to what you should pick, right? Where you should pick the action, where is it going to happen, and I think that's the most difficult part of the job as well. But when that is done correctly and beautifully, it also allows a beautiful storytelling from the play-by-play, beautiful hype moments from the play-by-play as well, and just allowing the color commentator to be just like the filler in the end because I don't need to explain that much because everything has been already been explained by the excellent observing. Does that make sense? I just realized there was a chat as well. Sorry. So let me know if there was anything in that chat that I missed prior. But yeah, I was looking at the Vansilli AMA, but I'll scroll through the chat as we go through as well. Hmm, hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So to piggyback on that as well. So first off, I guess there's two parts to your comment as well, Dave. So the first one is like your rank, right? There's also a reason why I'm stuck plat 3, diamond 1, and I can't get to immortal, or I can't grind as much as exactly in that same reason is because I'm spending a lot of my time watching these VODs to understand how teams play so that I don't have time to play myself, right? And there's only so many hours in a day. I'm trying to get back into working out. I have to walk my dog. I got to feed my dog. I don't have enough time to just grind and try to prove that my rank is is what is the criteria to prove my worth in my casting, right? I think it comes down to that as well. It's the same type of comments for the people that would say T tours and the people that would call me a shit caster on Twitch or whatnot. Is they think that I cannot do my job correctly just because I cannot get out of, let's say, plat diamond 3 to get to immortal, whatever, right? But that's not how it works. Like if you're looking at Anders, who's currently the analyst for Fnatic, that is currently boot camping with them right now, he's actually a gold 1 player. There are so many other coaches. I guess the coaches that we've gone onto our stream though for Valoranting, they were like immortal players because there were ex pros as well. So naturally, they're going to be good at the game. But the amount of times that you put into watching VODs and having less time to actually play the game, then it goes down to like the simple mechanics of like why you're not getting out of your rank, right? It's like crosshair placement, how to burst, how to shoot, how to peek, how to sidestep. Like all those things comes with practice, but it's also all of those things that you could actually learn from watching the VODs as well. What I mean by that is there's a lot of casters that would probably do some hindsight casting and be a little bit more negative on how a team plays. But the way that I approach my casting is I put myself in the shoes of a player as to why they were doing that and why I think that play happened or why they decide to push into a site where Of course, they push into a site where there's four players stacked in that site, but as a player, you don't have that knowledge. We know that knowledge because we get to see everything from an overhead view. Um, so it's good to be like in the shoes of a player, in the shoes of an IGL, and try to, as you watch these Vons, maybe even try to put yourself in the shoes of the IGL as to how do I think these rotates are going to happen? How do I think the call is going to happen to you? What would be the next step moving forward? And you try to like um, analyze or do a little bit of theory crafting about how it works, and then by watching the VODs, it kind of like solidifies your point of view. Like if you're wrong, but you understand why you are wrong, and if you have it right, then you understand a little bit more. Um, you understand that the play style a little bit more at the same time too, right? As how that game is played. But I do still recommend for people to still play the game so that you understand the basic mechanics of the abilities and stuff like that as well, of how it works for each agent, but you don't have to grind yourself to get out of a certain rank to prove your worth. Um so that's the first thing. I think we were talking about rank and stuff like that too. And pardon me on such a long-winded comment, because there was a two-part that I wanted to talk about this, and I forgot that second part that you were talking about, Days. So the first one was talking about your rank, but what was the second one? Do you remember? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yes, 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 yes. Yeah. I just realized too, based on that as well, it's shit, I just lost it again. Hold on. I think we were talking about the yes, the abilities and everything. So it also goes into a sidetrack and a tangent into where it's going to be difficult for you when you're first starting, right? Especially in observing into non VCT circuits. Because in non VCT circuits, such as the Valorant Esports Showdown, NSG monthlies, PK Nights monthlies, NSG monthlies, or weeklies, sorry, or whatever tournament that currently happens, VCC, VCS, they don't have the barracks UI, right? So it's going to be a lot more difficult to like kind of understand like what utility could be used and stuff like that too, because you don't get to see those abilities on the HUD, right? As an observer, nor do you get to see it actually when you're just watching a game in general. Um, Even if there's barracks that's available, it's probably not until somebody sends you a or sorry, not a clean feed, but a program feed from production in itself that's not lagged, so you could see what abilities could be available. But if not, that is not available for you as an observer. Um, so I guess that's where it's also slightly important to maybe understand how the agents are being played, because you're going to have to be a step ahead, as I mentioned before, of the play and of the casters. So if it's going to be a double initiator such as a Sky or a Sova, then how are the team on the attack playing that, right? So for example, in most cases, 90% of the time on Vine, you would have your Silva playing towards long B and your Sky playing towards showers, or vice versa, right? Because you're trying to get information um, on both initiators. So you know at least off the rip there's going to be a recon dart coming out from a Sova, or maybe even a guided light into showers. And then once you get control of showers a bit, then you throw a trailblazer to get information into showers, like all that kind of things. So you know that two flashes are available. It's 30 seconds to refresh until the next guided light comes out. The recon dart's the same thing. You get one, but it gets refreshed. Then the Allen drone, it's only a one-time use. How are they using it? When do you think they're going to use it? Is it to clear up long B after doing the recon dart to push an opponent back, and then push them back even furthermore with an owl drone towards long B? So And then, like, what other dronings do we have? Potentially, most likely on a bind, there's going to be a raise. So, what will the raise do? The raise is probably going to boombot towards Sands to try to get information to see if anybody's playing inside hookah. If they realize that the boombot hasn't spotted anybody and activated itself to run after somebody, then technically hookah is open. How do they take control of hookah right after that on the attacker side? How do they defend it on the defender side too? Oh, two Astra stars to actually try to prevent to go for a smoke as soon as they see contact or something like that, right? So there's there's still some sort of like basis as to see the tendencies of these, not for teams but just in general of how the map is being played. That ranks will help you in the fundamentals of understanding how the agents would be played, but then watching the Vons will add you that extra layer as to how to properly use these abilities. If I could put it that way. I'm gonna nodders as well.
Yeah. Um, I think it's really important to watch these VODs. I think it helped me a lot to develop my game sense, even though I can't really explain it that well. I understand what's going on that mini map to a certain extent. Um, Sometimes like it's really hard when you're doing like tier 3 tier 2 stuff, even where they don't really use utility how you would think they would do. So it's also important to, I feel like, make sure to come in with fresh eyes as much as possible when you're an observer to see everything clearly. um Anywho, I think that answers the first question.
Yeah, did that make sense for the first question for everyone? If not, please let me know if you need me to clarify a bit, but hopefully it helps a bit.
You can do another nodders or you can put another
Yeah,
emoji.
and feel free just to type it in chat as well if you're more comfortable with typing out the question or comments or whatever. Feel free, and also like, please also bear in mind that I'm not the um I don't consider myself like the full expert in observing and everything as well. And there's probably some things that you guys even know better than I do. So if there are some points that you want to comment back and have a conversation about a certain point, please feel free to, because I'm all ears to listen to that as well. And I'm actually doing these. I guess I'm doing this conversation based on my experiences as a commentator. But if it doesn't fully answer the question, or if you need more clarification, please let me know.
I think it's just really important to have a caster like Vansilli, because one of you guys will eventually work with Vansilli. I have no doubt about that. I think it's really important to communicate with your casters. Um, and I think sometimes casting can give you another insight into your own observing and see if you can improve. So I'm hoping this conversation can help with that about, a caster's mindset, because for us as observers, we have to predict the next fight, yeah, as Vincent Silly said, whereas Yeti states, finding the next beat of the story. And I think having, so thank you, Vansilli, for coming and
Yeah, no
talking
worries,
about
no
that,
worries, no worries, no worries.
because I think it's, as a new observer, I know for me at least, it was very difficult to freaking understand the game at a high tier level. Like I was like, these flashes and like how Viper ults are used, um, and so forth. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, let's go on to our second question, which will be asked by Delta.
Awesome.
Oh, it's my turn. Okay. So second question. When are picture in picture features useful for you? Are there any cases where the picture in picture feature are not helpful?
Um, I think it's cool actually to see. Now that I think about it, because when we first started in the beta days, and I was watching how picture in picture was being used, was that they would use the pip for the free cam, right? Instead of actually doing a free cam and it's on its own, to actually see like the full execution coming in before switching back into a POV. But what I do like about the pip is being able to see where utility land. I think the recon dart is going to be probably the most important one that I could think of, and the shock darts as well. Um, yeah, I think lineups for mollies, for snake bites, for fragments, for utility in general, as to where it's being lined up and where it's looking to land. I think that is probably going to be the sweet spot for me in terms of understanding the pit. I think where it's probably the worst place to use pip is on 1v1s. I know that at some point in Counter Strike, they tried to do 1v1 split screen, and it just gave me vertigo. Like I was getting motion sickness, and just even if I understood the game, I got lost watching the 1v1 because I have to watch too many things at once. Even if it's just two, it's just two different angles clearing different, two different POVs clearing the different angles. I'd rather just to keep it on one. Um, so yeah, I think to shorten this answer a little bit more, it's definitely more on utility usage that I like to see this being used more often. Are there any other examples where outside of utility we currently use it for Delta, where it could maybe help refresh in my memory?
So typically we will do a pip for spike, dif- well, not diffuse, but when it's
What?
planted.
Yeah.
Um, I have seen it a little bit with like raise utility, but
Uh-huh.
those are
Uh-huh.
the main things that come to mind.
Yeah, I think definitely in terms of being planted or being diffused, right? If somebody's sitting on it, then I think it's important to show. Because even for me, throughout the whole chaos of, especially when I was doing play-by-play, when there's a whole chaos of like a retake, I actually don't even pay attention, or I can't notice the yellow bar on the top of the screen that somebody's actually diffusing the spike. Because I'm just so focused on looking at all the abilities that are currently being used and how it's being utilized and who's being cleared, that I don't even look at the spike being diffused. So I think at that point, having that pip of a person just sitting on it would probably be a good beneficial way for me as a play or even as the caller commentator support to see that somebody's on that spike so I could let my play-by-play know. But if not, as you said, if it was raised utility, then it's just similar to everything else, right? To look at how the utility is being used and what it's currently scouting out or what it's currently being lined up for.
Great, thank you.
As Skittle stated, Killjoy ults and Silver ults are often in pips.
That's
I
true. That's true.
I do pips for bomb drops because what I noticed with one team is like they wouldn't they would like default too long, if that makes sense, and then they run out of time to execute on site. So I try
Yeah.
to like highlight the bomb being dropped because I
Hmm.
myself I'm like, what is happening? They're pushing on the site, but they don't have bomb question mark. You know what I mean?
No, for
Uh,
sure. I think that's definitely a very important one, as you were mentioning. Like, let's say they pull the CS:GO Naive style, where they hit a site with 15 seconds, 10 seconds left on the clock, and then once they actually get spike site control, they don't have spike because it's still in their spawn. I think that's a good way to highlight a good old splat chat. Oh my spaghetti moment.
and Kill also said Viper ults. Um, for my gen, for me specifically, I'm curious about your, I guess, opinion, or how do you like pips of oversight of maps now that we've transitioned into almost like a four screen the
I was about to say because we're starting to see more full screens of a Viper's Pit going out, or like going straight into the POV of a Hunter's Fury, um, into where they're shooting. So I actually like that a little bit more than the pip in itself, because seeing that come out slowly and you're zooming out into the free cam of the Viper's Pit spreading, it also gives you an idea of like what's around that Viper's Pit, who's on defense, who's on attack that's about to go in for the action. or is it going to be just a stalemate lockdown for a few seconds while, let's say, the defenders on retake are still waiting for recon dart to come back up off their Sova before they hit back a site, right? So I kind of like the full screen more than pips as a caster right now.
Thank you. I also noticed that like Sova orbs are now used to clear space. Um, More so than getting kills almost. I feel like when it comes to higher tier, like there's usually if there's a Sova ult on the defender side, there's usually a defender on site that's gonna push into something like the fight and try to get
Mm.
those kills. That's what I've noticed a little bit. Um, so sometimes it's better to not be on the Sova ult and default on it almost. That's just me though. That's what I've noticed. I don't know if that's true or not. It just seems like a lot of people are trying to use the ult as like a way to force the attackers positioning to favor the defender's teammates when it comes to peeking and stuff. That's just I don't know if that's true or not, but it just seems like it.
Yeah, I think you have a little bit of both. I think in terms of how the Sova uses the ult these days. Sometimes they just have. It depends also if you're on attack or on defense too. Sometimes you just want to do those. I guess it's twofold in a sense that it just naturally clears space when you're trying to do like a blind ult into a certain area to try to see if you catch somebody off guard, right? Um, and when that happens as well, it's because those teams have studied their opponents in terms of like tendencies of how they're playing their opponents' defaults. So it's like, oh well, if for example, let's say Breeze, most of the time you're gonna have a Viper getting ready to set up a wall on a site, and people are just setting up like an Owl Drone or a Trailblazer from shop. So if the Trailblazer is going to be coming from shop to try to clear more towards brick, then that Sky technically is going to be stuck in her animation um, inside shop. So just pulling out a Hunter's Fury in that spot could potentially ping her and ping how many more players are around that area. But also trying to make sure that they're also spreading out the attack if it's going to be a full hit from the attackers, right? On if you're looking from a defender's perspective, so it could definitely be used in both cases, trying to land kills, but also trying to disrupt anything that's going on. And you, of course, you see it during spike denials, right? When people are trying to plan.
Satisfied?
All good. I'm a caster and I can't find my words, so I feel you.
Okay, okay. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Dutura Reno. I think so. Question 3 is going to be asked by Duet Duet Reno. I think I know your real
Neutrino?
name. Du-
Neutrino, yeah.
Oh,
Du-
Sophie.
Sophie. Yeah, I
Um,
know your real name, Sophie. And I was like, I don't know if I'm supposed to just like out you like that. So I was like,
oh, it's fine. I don't mind. So yeah, so I'm a big fan of the free cams. I feel like that's what inspired me to start
Hmm.
observing. But how do you feel about the usage of free cams? And do you think there are any scenarios, apart from where important action is missed, where the free cam might not be helpful?
Yeah, so this is a funny spot for me because I enjoy the free cams a lot, and it looked pretty cool, especially. So let me start on different I guess steps. The first one being freeze time. So I did enjoy the free floats in the past about like the cool little figurines and stuff like that we're able to find across the maps and whatnot. But I think what's most important for me as a caster now is trying to figure out too where how the Cypher is setting up his traps. How is the Killjoy setting up her defense? How is the Astra supporting the Killjoy, or excuse me, supporting the Killjoy or the Cipher too. And how are they setting up their defense? Actually, would be kind of cool to see if we had a chance to see those more during the freeze time, because we always look at like these nerdy and ratty Cipher cams or Cipher traps that in a couple of weeks everybody knows about them a little bit later. But it's just cool to see innovation coming out from like Sentinels players and stuff like that, to see how they're setting up their defense. I think that's one of the free cam moments that is kind of missed on my end as a caster, where you know because you have 30 seconds of freeze time or whatever time it is, and there's just so much that you could look at and understand from like mm, a point of views of actions perspective, that it could happen right away, that I feel that sometimes free cam on other things does not allow us to get ready for that. And what I mean by that too is, again, coming from Counter Strike, let's say you have a freeze time of 15 seconds and you're buying for your teammates and you're dropping and whatnot. That's a perfect moment to use free cam for CS, right? Because everybody's always stuck in their spawn. But when you're looking at Valorant, you actually have 30 seconds where everybody can move around anywhere around the map as long as it's behind barriers. So what are they trying to do behind those barriers? And how are they preventing the push from happening? How do they set that up? And how are the attackers currently about to set up their attacker side? So if actually I had the free float of a Sova around his two players as he's about to owl drone into eight side sewers of Haven, then damn, I think that's fucking cool to catch more than seeing I kind of still like it though, but seeing that crab walking around on breeze from like the rock to the tree, cute as fuck, funny as hell, but also take it away from my analytical mind of what I'm trying to catch within the round itself. But I guess there's also a fine line into understanding um, when should we take a game too seriously or when should we show a little bit of fun. That's not my area of expertise. I think that mostly comes down to like the producer shot caller of how they want to present the show. But if it was my call, I'm the type of person that's a little bit more serious in my broadcast. So I'd rather see um, the actual gameplay and setups of the teams. So that's one thing. So that's just freeze time. In terms of the action in itself, when it comes down to the rounds, I think that free cam is actually super cool in terms of getting ready for the initial hits. And I think when it comes down to the synergy of what you currently have between most of the observers of free cam and POV observers, I think you all pretty much nail it into POV knows who to follow when the action is about to start, while the free cam is able to show the execution that's happening, right? Or that's about to happen. Where I find that there's a miss, again, I think that's the feedback on production too, is that, again, this comes down to me casting Valorant Esports Showdown again, and this was on Ascent, where Spike has now been planted. There's a nice free cam of like where the defenders are currently setting up to retake, where the attackers are setting up for the pulse plant. But then the free float cam stayed on there for like a good 10 seconds while it's still floating in the air. While I'm a play-by-play guy and I'm just staring at a free cam that's floating away from a spike. That doesn't give me anything in terms of trying to tell the story. But again, in hindsight, realizing that's not on the observer, but that's more on the switcher and the producer to make sure that they're able to switch out of the free cam so that the person free camming can go into the next shot into their free cam and switch into the POV where the action is about to happen. So I think when Days was talking about what's important in terms of discussing with your casters, it's also very important to discuss with your producer if they're fairly new into the game as well as to how you observe and how the game is currently being observed, so that they understand a little bit more how to do these switches. Um, but yeah, I think I think that answers that in terms of not beneficial for me is trying is like the zoom out of the dragons or going into like I don't know the top side of B of Haven or something like that. It's cool, like I said, it's super nice aesthetically, but it doesn't give me anything in terms of somebody who's more, I guess, hardcore and tuned into the game. But it's still beautiful aesthetically to watch. It's just pros and cons and of what I like and what other people like, you know. So if I was subjective, then I'd rather look at the setups. Does that answer a bit here, Sophie?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Awesome, awesome.
I just have a random follow up.
Yeah, go ahead, Delta.
This is just a personal preference, but I'm curious how other people, especially you, feel about it. When Astra goes into her astral form, I typically just go off of it because I don't know, it's not aesthetically pleasing to me. But do you find any value in like sometimes watching her put her stars down?
Uh, that's a good question. I don't think we've seen it enough for me to be able to have a good opinion on that, actually. Um, because you kind of already see it being set up on the mini map, right? And I guess that's where it comes. That's where it comes down to what's aesthetically pleasing as to should we do a free float of like the A site or like the Dragon on Haven or the B site Haven, or do we want to show like the Astra setup with the Killjoy and stuff like that too, right? So I guess there's that fine line to understand what we want to show. Although, what I do love watching is, for example, Vanity is trying to run away from a site and he's playing a 1v2, and then he's because of the POV, we see him going to astral form and drop a star down, and then he's able to pop it right away and still manage to get a kill. I think that's pretty fucking cool to see. Um, but within the setup itself, I guess it does kind of it's not necessarily not aesthetically pleasing, but as we already see the stars being set up on the minimap, um, maybe you don't really need to see it that much. Although, unless you're looking at the minimap and you're like, oh wait, the star is actually being placed weirdly. And then you realize later on that, for example, some Astras, when they're hitting the B side of Haven, or putting on the left side wooden boxes, so that it becomes a one way from bottom B into C Link, then that's actually something pretty cool to show. Because in the later rounds, you could pay attention to let the audience know how the Astra is placing that star and why they're placing it that way. Was it a mistake or not? You know.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
For some food for thought, most viewers will not look at the mini map. Okay, like I think it's really important to if you're observer, to think of the viewer. Um, and that's not supposed to be mean on I'm part of the viewer, but like all of us are very dedicated to esports. You know what I mean? Like we watch the game. I've watched pretty much every tournament, like for Valorant for the longest time. So like for me, I always look at the minimap as a observer. I look at the minimap when I play the when I watch these tournaments. So I think it's important if Vansilli is talking about placing the stars. Hey, see these attacker stars going down on the minimap to show that as a POV, just so cognitively the viewers understand what's actually going on. I don't know if that makes any sense. I think it's just important to think about these little details because the game is really confusing to watch if you're not super in depth in Valorant itself. That's just my thoughts. So, some food for thought to think about. If there's more important things going on, then yeah, you don't want to stay on it. But for pre-rounds, I think it's really cool, especially if it's solo observing. Duo observing is a bit different. I've been
Yeah, that
pipping
was
the Astra straws actually for um, site executions. Like, because Astra. So what happens is like the Astra will always place their stars before the execution. So I try to like put that like in a pip, and I've been playing around with that to see if it like brings more clarity uh to the viewer of like, oh hey, they're talking about things getting placed. Astra, who's Astra, and I try to tie it in at least as a secondary observer or free camera, whatever. Sorry, but yeah, thank you Delta and fans. And again, sorry, I kind of just started on a tangent.
all good.
And that's just my opinion. I don't know. I watched a game with my dad of Valorant, and he's older, so of course he won't understand Valorant. But like, it kind of gave me a realization of holy crap, I am not the average viewer when it comes to it. I think a lot of viewers may, there's going to be first timers in chat. I remember watching Valorant for the first time, and I was like, what the heck is going on? So I think it's really important to kind of try to make that first viewer time experience less intimidating.
Yeah, there was actually some advice that Mel gave me a while back because I was thinking I was like an average viewer. Like, of course they see that they put a trap down there, and of course they see this. Like, why wouldn't they? But she was saying I was making like way too many assumptions about what was going on in the mini map and assuming that the viewers like knew what was going on. So I always keep that in the back of my mind of like I need to make sure I'm showing everything and not making assumptions on what the viewer might see.
Yeah, well, the simplest example is also looking at the when you're looking at the mini map of how the cipher sets up his traps. Sometimes the mini map, the trap wire shows like a vertical angle where technically it should be horizontal because a vertical would not make any sense. So you kind of really don't know how they're setting it up. And then finally, let's say, for example, a side split, then it's set in a way that it crosses over from, I don't know, flower pot to the ground somewhere. And you're trying, and because of that angle, it shows like a different, it shows the trap wire being vertical on the minimap instead of horizontal, right? So you're sometimes, again, going back to why I like the free cam or seeing the setups of the ciphers is really cool instead of trying to go into a server later on and figure out how I do it.
Okay, thank you, Vansilli. Can I get Nautilus in the chat? This is so weird. It's like, can I get a hype emoji in chat or poggers in chat? I don't know. And I get a oh yeah, oh yeah. Yep. Nah, thank you for your insight, Vansilli. Seriously, I think as observers, I think there should be more openness to reach out to like other people outside of our own craft. Then, um, to like improve or get other insights to eventually improve our own craft, if that makes sense.
For
So yeah.
sure, for sure.
Okay, so this is, I think, more of a, as you stated before in the first question, observing is a lot about prioritizing stuff. You know, there's a lot of things happening, which fights are the most important. So, question four is, how can I tell whether a flank is important? Um, yeah, it's pretty much that is because there's a lot of flanks. I feel like in this game, um, and
I, yeah,
eh,
I guess what's easier to find out when a flank's important or not is to notice on that mini map how close that person is to to actually backstabbing people, right? You don't have to try to look at a flank that's like 20 seconds away when they're still walking around, or like if somebody's still defaulting at bottom C and all the actions happening towards A, then they only start walking after um, spike has been planted towards A. You don't need to worry about the flank still, right? But like once that person's made it towards defender spawn of Haven and they're about to come into lower side spawn to flank people, then I think that's where it is important. Other times where it could happen where uh, again, taking Haven for example, you're on defense and you're pushing down B and you're about to flank A choke point. Most of the time, there's going to be a trap wire there. So, uh, if I would switch or if I would think that a flank's important is if they're breaking that trap and they're continuing to move forward, or if they're just sitting behind there and because they know that somebody might rotate back, or they're just waiting for somebody to rotate back, and you're looking from your observer's perspective and you're seeing that players are actually rotating back towards mid choke, or should I say attacker spawn, and that trap wire still hasn't been broken, but that person is still hiding behind the trap wire, then I think that's definitely important to look at. Um, but again, like I said, if they're 10, 15 seconds away, I wouldn't put that much importance on it yet.
dope. Yeah, that's personally my thing too. And oftentimes, I don't know. I realized I did a VOD review with another observer, and I realized that there's a lot of things I could be showing better. So it's something that I need to improve on. Is when off flank's important. How do like if someone's sitting like an enemy side is someone sitting in sewers and the rest of the team is pushing on the side, how does the sewers person impact how the team will execute on the side, or will they rotate because they hear people running, you know, the defenders rotating to the other side, you know, type of thing. Um so yeah, thank you. I think that's that question. And then this is just my own question. Number five is, what are the differences between like micro and macro gameplay? I still don't really understand it myself, and I think it's, as an
Yeah,
observer, it's
sure.
important to think about that as in an analyst role, and I to predict those, like what to show um
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
during the downtime and stuff too.
For sure. So I guess to approach that in terms of the definition of macro and micro is it's pretty much there. So the macro, it's looking at the overall arching of what is going on, and micro is putting it into under our lens, right? So my definition of what looking at what a micro play is, or what is the macro itself in Valorant, and how to apply that term macro into there, is to understand where we are currently in the round. in a sense that okay, we're at freeze time, and there's 30 seconds in the buy round and whatnot. The macro of this so far is what is the situation that we're in right now from the defenders or the attackers perspective. So from the defenders, is it a save round, is it a gun round? From the attackers, is it a save round or is it a gun round? um, Naturally, the macro for the attackers is that they're trying to plant the spike towards A or B, right? Now you're going into a second layer of the macro is how are they going to try to plant the spike with the economy that they currently have? That's another layer into it. Then you go deeper into the layer and say, okay, if they want to try to work towards the A side, which looks to be the tendencies of where the attackers are going with their eco, um, how are they going to try to do it? Right? Is it going to be um, a mid to shower split on bind? Is it going to be looking like a fake towards A side to rotate back towards B? What is the overall strategy of that as well? Like, what is the main goal? Is how it plays that macro style, and then once you get into the micro, is okay. Well, if it's going to have to be a split from short A showers into bind A, then how are we starting the round on the attacker side? If it's an eco, do we have a blade storm that's available from the jet? Do we have a bunch of sheriffs? Is it just going to be a classic? Do we see two satchel charges for a raise? Where now looking at the micro is okay. Well, the macro is we're going to try to get a split from short A showers to A site. We're going to try to take looks like Lamb's control because most of the bodies are setting up towards short A. Now you're going to get into how we're going to take the Lamb's control. How are we going to take U-Haul control? Ray satchel charges, jet dash, blade storm, shorties. What is that play? And then from a defender's perspective, is how are they playing that back? So utilization of the utility and whatnot, right? But that's just like one portion of it. So what I mean by that is, okay, the macro goal is trying to hit it towards the A site. They're trying to take showers control. They're trying to take U control. The micro of that is now they're using a bunch of utility to try to push and pull in that area. Now that there's a stalemate, if the attackers are falling back, the macro game has changed. Because now we're going back into a macro game of, okay, well, we've lost maybe one or two players on the attack. We've stopped attacking. So what are we doing right now in our macro? Are we actually going back into a default play? Are we cutting noise and trying to re-hit into the A site? Or are we just full off rotating by going through the teleporter and rushing into B? And with that, once that change of pace has been made, so now understand that to take the teleport, the macro is now that they're planning to go towards that B site. And then from there, how are they taking that B site? Do they still have utility left to work with? Well, how are they going to do it? And then that's the micro of like getting that map control. How do they scale into the section of the map to finally reach their goal? Does that make sense?
Yes, at least to me. Does that make sense to
Okay.
everyone else? Poggies in chat. Okay. Taupe. Okay. Now we're going to analyzing grounds. So we have one from NSG Winter Champs, then two from the Valorant Elite. I think these are kind of good rounds to analyze. I'm not quite sure what determines a good round to analyze. So,
Cool.
let's
Yeah,
just
we
hope
could
it's.
definitely check it out. Yeah, so I could open it and share my screen. So give me one second right here. Um, okay, so let's click on that.
So this first one I already got. No, never mind. Just let's just do it. Yeah.
Close some windows. And then we share. I think I'll have to do share screen, so that means you may not get audio on this.
That's fine. We don't need audio. So I'm the POV on this one. Yeti's the free
Okay.
cam. And the director, like usual, when it's Yeti.
Okay. Okay. So see, like again, this free float aesthetically is nice if you kind of want to do that, right? And it's on the producer to choose what you kind of want to show. But like in the end, I kind of want to know what this Killjoy is doing. Yeah, she's placing a turret towards B, but where is it looking? Is it covering like B main? Is it covering A link? Alarm bot? Okay, makes sense. It's like kind of normal, but these nanoswarms, the front C normal is a C one. Is it intertwined, interconnected with the Astra Star that's in that area there too? Right. So I think that kind of stuff is kind of nice to see. But just to rewind back, so I'm going to rewind back and forth as well because we're just going to be micro analyzing as we go. Um, so as you see right now on this mini map on the attacker side, what I pay attention to also as a color commentator is not only as how are they setting up the defense right now on B side or on C side, but what is going on the attack, right? So as a color commentator, I already have an idea that they're trying to work something towards this A side control because that's how many players are currently posted onto the A side, and most of the time, usually when you have a an initiator somewhere with other people, that's the main part of the action. That's where it first starts. Then you just kind of figure out is it going to be an owl drone or is it going to be a recon dart that's going to be used um, by this Silva. But in the end, how it's looking at it for me is that Emulsion, usually when you're playing ranked or whatnot, and you want to try to go for an all-out hit into the A site, you kind of want to have all five of your players with you, right? So you will have maybe the turret going up on this boxes. You have maybe an alarm bot going somewhere as well, but you kind of still have to be in a radius of your turret and of your alarm bot so that it stays activated and that you're actually useful for your team. This said, if I still see Emulsion moving in towards the C site, then I would expect some sort of lurk, some sort of rotate play coming in from both sides of this map. So it may look in the micro play that we're trying to potentially end up into C, right? But how are we working this macro to get into the C site? Then is it to sell this fake into A? And if they're selling this fake, how are they doing it? So the micro of it is that they're actually still using their double duelist to get into the A site, potentially use a Sova to help them out to get map control, and then potentially go back into a slow default and work towards the C site. Right. So that's what we're trying to pay attention to. So now, even on top of that, seeing that it's really looking like it's something that it's something that's going to be fast from the point of view of the defenders, because you now have a star that's going to be placed over here and a star that's placed over here. Now that it's deeper into sewers, I have a feeling that this is more going to be a Nova Pulse instead of a gravity well. Well, this one is going to be the gravity well because most of the times you have people posted on the A site with the silver dart and whatnot. So you want to try to catch them off guard and spray them through that, right? So that's the ideas that I'm looking at when I'm looking at it from an observer's perspective, or sorry, from a color commentator's perspective. So now I'm clicking on these. Okay, so we have a counter smoke that's coming in. We see the smoke coming out from Jet. I do like it that right now, because the action is currently going towards this A side, you want to sell that storyline, right? So everything that I've mentioned before as to this push and pull, this initial battle that's going to happen, well, we're actually following it from an observer's perspective, right? So going into the first person, as we see shot up, because they're actually the first person at the point. It's not going to be the jet. The jet didn't dash in yet. If somehow the jet probably dashed into sewers, you probably would have switched out from shot up over to the jet so that we make sure that the jet can try to see if they can get an opening into sewers. Right. So you see all this ruckus that just happened pulls up the rotation from the observers. But look at the minimap. Everybody's still holding a default right now for the attackers. So we haven't made any noise yet. We still have a turret that's activated to see if we have any aggressive push towards long B. But the main gist of the action, as you're looking at this mini map, is still going to be these guys trying to see. Like this might be the first contact because the rotation came out from the defenders at long to watch sewers. Or we're still going to try to press forward. But as you're looking at this mini map now, Jet is starting to fall back for a bit. You're seeing that they're catching up with the ML Shin so that they can actually start maybe creating more of a rotation, sorry, towards this B side. So let's see what happens here. So right now that crossfire is up, so they watch here towards the towards B and towards garage. And there you go. I like it. So now we started with the dart. We started with some utility from Astra. Now we have the owl drone, and that's going to be heard at some point by sewers. And usually, again, like I said, when an owl drone is coming close, most likely you're going to have potentially your duelist or whatnot, anybody that's going to try to get some information and fight right after. But the owl drone is going down towards sewers. It gets broken up. A fake star, and I like this because that could have potentially been a first fight. But you see now that there's jets being posted into sewers and nothing's really going to happen yet because now on the other side there's that chess play between Screwface and Emulsion towards Long C. So we went for double fakes, double kill noise, and we're looking to potentially hit towards the A site. So, like I said, the macro in the beginning, when I looked at the beginning of this round, it looked like we're going to work towards the C site. But there's still potential that the macro is ending back towards the A site if we lose a couple of players on C site over here from the Immortals, right? Because if Emilshian dies or we use a couple of stars and we can't take site, but we do have a kill towards A, there's still a possibility that we end back towards this A site hit. That said, if it's still going to be a C hit, then that's where that question number 4 comes in. When is this flank going to be important? This jet is now going to become our flanker if the hit happens towards the C site. But if the jet gets a kill and everybody's moving towards the A side, then technically the killjoy is going to become your flanker that's going to rotate through B side, right? Just understanding how pulling these rotations and working a default on a map could work for some teams. So now we have the alarm bot. So we see that Emulsion's placing this alarm bot. So potentially that could be a call for them to just hit out towards the A site just because we have something watching flank. That's a huge pick. I like it that we actually stayed on Screwface because, they're the opper. They're the first one that's going to be able to get the action. And usually it's always nice to see flashy kills with the op. And in most cases, when it's a rifle versus an operator, the operator is going to win. So to stay on Screwface is actually quite nice, even though it was probably an even nicer shot that shot up got onto Screwface. But we can't predict those. So now on to Kohler because he's the next person that's going to be the next opponent that the attackers need to fight against to get into sight to get control into sight. And Kohler, with the time remaining, is like, okay, well, I might get flanked at some point, so he's moving out of position, so that's great. So now you see an op being picked up. We see a 2v3. Great kill from Ange because he's actually into the action. So we talked about the flank from Jet. It's still not that important yet because Ange is still in a position where this Nebula could disappear at any moment, and there might be a face-to-face action between an Astra and Astra. See, so it disappears. He looks towards the wrong angle. The timing on all of that too. So here's the shot. Nice little overview just to see that the Nebula doesn't actually catch and she's stuck on a 2v1. And that's the most common rule. At least that's the only rule that I know in observing, that when it's a 1 versus X, always stay on the 1. Even if it looks like it's not going to be winnable, you stay on that 1 because you might be able to have that highlight reel. Mhm. Yeah, so the tough part as well about the blaze wall is because it's one of those blaze wall that don't last too long, right? So the wall is very, very short. Um so I don't know if it was used for like getting better map placement or round placement or whatnot, but you could definitely see that with whatever stars that they put towards that front, what we were trying to do here with Ange. And I think he even placed a star and recalled it, if I'm not mistaken, right? Let me just look real quick. Because he's got 2 stars right now. Once it disappears, he goes, puts a star up. Yeah, so see, okay, so he did throw a nebula, right? So he did throw a nebula into long C, and then you had a double smoke just in case. So it did make sense that the blaze wall did come up so that they could try to go for a tap. So that's actually a really good call, still to try to predict that because they really double smoke down towards the long seaside. Well, the other thing too is like the flank in itself is the that definition of a flank is if they're actually able to get behind enemy lines, right? So if that jet was here, you guys see my marker, right? Because I'm sharing my desktop. You guys see what I'm drawing on my monitor, right? Okay. So if this jet's over here and she ends up going around this area to flank, then cool. That's a flank, right? If she falls back around this area and goes through here to flank, that's another flank. But here at this point, where it's about to go head to head and even go for a battle in here, that only just becomes a lurk, right? So a flank is you really want to try to catch somebody that's able to make it behind enemy lines and able to get a kill behind people. So if somehow you still had defenders over here, but the jet is around this corner, she made it through garage, and she's about to come back here, then I'd spectate the jet, right? But that's also after this whole action happened around here. So if this nebula comes out and there, you have like one attacker over here, then for sure you're gonna at least for me, I would switch over to that jet because this one's fully nullified by nebula, right? And then these guys are going to try to move in and go for a diffuse while you have that flank that's going to come in the end. And the flank is going to be the winning condition of that round. Because if Jet dies, then this smoke's about to disappear. Then you switch to the 1vx, which is that other rule of observing, so that this person could try to clutch it or not. Cool. Yeah, no worries. You just, you just gotta watch VODs. Yeah, it's again once you start understanding what each agent is going to do, then you could already start seeing that pull out, and especially like when you're looking at teams that are going to be like, okay, well this is a team that likes to play more defaults, then you could start seeing that as well. Me, I don't necessarily know for DZ and for Immortals because I haven't watched these guys in a very long time, but it'll definitely it's definitely like some of the basic stuff that you're able to just try to make out, right? Want to go on the next one? Okay. hmm Well, again, I think it also depends as well. Like the thing that could happen over here is that the free camp right now is because there's no sentinels or anything, right? And it's just a bunch of walls and stars, so it's not that bad. So aesthetically, it's still pretty good to see a couple of these shots. But then we want to get into the action of what's going to happen. So looking at this so far, the macro of it is that with the spike being down, you're automatically assuming that there's going to be a default. There's going to be a slow play. And looking at this little triangle, right? That's sticking out here from Rays. She's gonna boom bot in here, which would bounce into Hookah so that they could try to clear that area or scout to see if anybody's in there. That's like one of the most basic things you could do as a raise on this map, where everybody knows, even at any level, you'll understand that with this dot, usually it's a boom bot that's going to go in that area. So again, understanding how you're trying to work this towards the attacker. They have a jet here for KCP, so you're also thinking at this point then Jet and Silva, they're going to try to activate her somehow with potentially with this default taking control of showers once again, as I mentioned before. The thing is, because they don't have a sky, you can't really work that double extremity information, as I mentioned to you guys before, where potentially ban and governor could do it for knights, right? But if you're looking at this macro play, what are we trying to do? Is a slow default from the attacker side, trying to run picks, trying to see if we can get an early pick and react on that, or also trying to play a default more passively and try to see what the defenders could do, right? And from an observer's perspective, from looking at the free cam, as we see three players now towards Long B. And remember when I talked about the double initiator? Usually you have one on each side trying to gain information. Well, this time you have a double initiator trying to take control of information of Long B, right? And one thing that could maybe help out here is that if you're going to throw a recon dart or you're going to throw a flash or a trailblazer, whatever, and you're not finding any information, you could already have an assumption that one, or you have a couple of players avoiding all of that by hiding behind these boxes, or the second one is that nobody's going to be in this area and you do have a default that's heavy towards the A site. So now there's also a possibility that based on what's going on, because we have stars on showers, because this is probably going to be called by these two players on defense watching this area, that hey, we have stars that are deep, we'll probably have to wait and see if there's actually going to be like a recon dart or whatever coming in from the attacker side so they could call, oh, this Silva's over here. They might try to take orb control or whatnot, right? Because you also have what a showstopper that's available. You have a Hunter's Fury, but you're also 2 stars away. So technically, the stars may not be that important for the attacker side either when you're looking at the macro showers control. But overall, it's just to understand if there's going to be any type of pressure going in. From our perspective, it looks like we might have, right? So the round starts. We're going to see this recon dart coming out from critical, and the stars already coming out. And look at this. Look at this mini map over here. So this is where it's important. With this recon dart that's coming out and doesn't spot anybody, and all three players are heading out towards teleporter, there's going to be a pinch coming in. So this recon dart, the stars that came out, and after the stars are gone, look how aggressive Scuba and Frosty are. They're just going to put their wall up, trying to keep these guys in this corner, and you're going to have a triple flank coming in from teleporter. So it goes through with a flash, and here comes the flank from behind. Weeded is watching that flank too. So there's been a lot of trades that happen at this point. I actually still like it that we saw it from the point of view of Frosty, because a showstopper, you don't really need that much aim going into it. So can Frosty actually land these 2 kills or not? He was able to get one, able to get and that's it. We got the trade right after. And again, I also like the fact that we're actually looking at POVs now for Hunter's Fury and not pips. And I think this is just a simple rule of the 2v1. Like it doesn't even like even for me, even if the Viper was actually even closer to actually get a backstab kill onto We Did, I'd still stay on We Did. Yeah. And that allows that nice storyline there from both of these casters, from Sean and from Dan as well. All right. Yeah, no worries, no worries. It's all good. It's all good. So we're looking at the next round, right? The 4-7. So after replay. Okay, so after replay, we want to figure out what's going on here. So the economy is very low for the defenders. We have a Spectre coming out from Ban. We have very, very low economy at this point, too. It's the last round of the half anyways. So you're buying whatever you can. You have a Cosmic Divide. But you also have a one away from seekers, right? For ban. So me looking at the minimap, are we going to try to get any type of pressure? No, we're not. Right? Ban is still holding here towards you. It doesn't look like they're going to try to fight for orb site control. Although this ping potentially from somebody on the attacker side, JC Stani as the IGL would probably say, hey, just be aware of this just in case if they're trying to get this orb for Seeker's control. Right. So that's why potentially if I'm looking at this, we see Silvo heading back towards long. We see there's Rays looking towards the left side. So again, the spikes being down, we have another default for KCP. Is the call right now for JC Stani to tell Critical to take control of Long B just in case, but he's a little bit too far. But it's still going to allow for them to get a bit of information if they lose that as well, right? So it's going to be JC Stunny that goes instead. Silva goes back into the long side, and it goes back to that same default that they were doing before. This time, though, there's no boom bot that goes out when the barriers comes out. They're just looking um, for some picks at this point. So I like that we saw the lineup here from We Did. As I mentioned before, a nice pip to see where it lands. It's probably going to land towards hookah. Towards lamps right over here. So that's going to nullify ban overall. Now this recon dart to come out towards long, and then we get one away from a Hunter's Fury here from critical. We still have this boombot, I think that's still available because we haven't used a star yet. But what I like about this is because there's such a stalemate, and you're just clicking through to understand who might be the first one that's going to get the contact, and you're not always sticking on one person, in my eyes, which is kind of nice. But you could look. Yeah, I was gonna say the Aldro might be coming out soon and try to clear out, so they spot one over here. Now we have a ping coming out here from showers at the same time, or just trying to spray to get some kills. That was a huge kill from Ziff. For you guys to be able to see that and call that he's going to push through to get that kill, that's actually like even I wouldn't know. So the TP went through, but this battle is about to happen in the end. Especially with the Seekers coming out, you'll probably have one rotate across. It's a fake coming back, and this is information. So switching over here to JC Stani is actually quite huge because he needs this win against Ban, and he's on a 2v1. So we talk about a 1v on clutches. I think 1v on map control is also quite nice to see. And like Dan said, right? Dan actually mentioned as a play-by-play caster, like he had no idea that those players were there. And that's why it's important as well as an observer to be able to catch that too, because us from a POV, overhead view, bird's eye view, we see all this happening. We see that JC Stallion is going to be in a tough place coming back into the site. So now you're trying to build that suspense to say, can JC Stani actually do it? And if in the point of view of JC Stani is able to get these 2 kills, then that allows for that play-by-play caster to actually bring that hype moment into like, holy shit, this round is actually winnable right now, because it would turn into a 2v1 in favor of KCP. That was a winning condition there. But now that we have 20 seconds left on the clock, the spike's down. It's nice that you stick on to JMO. Because all hopes are up. Technically, he doesn't win this, so you just stick to him all around. See if he's going to be able to get it. Now there's no time, so I think that's good enough. Yep. What was the last round? Yeah. So at that point, so that storyline to say like it was a desperate play from JMO at this point, and with the time remaining, that's why even as a caster, we didn't really hype up that moment anyways because we knew it was a lost cause, right? So that's totally fine in that sense too, because the role of a play-by-play is not to hype every single play anyways. The role of the play-by-play is to tell the correct story. So if it shows that there's no way that JMO is going to win, if I'm going to be hyping that round, I'm not a good play-by-play caster. So it's good that the lull that happens in the action as the observer also supports the lull of that last round being so anticlimactic as the last round of the half. So that's why it's also really important as for observer to follow that for the play by play caster. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. Nice. No worries, no worries. Hopefully it helped. Nice. All good, all good. Thanks, friends. Everything is Vansilli. If you I don't really promote my stuff. If you want to follow, perfect. If you don't want to follow, all good. No judgment, you know? So it's all good. But yeah, thank you for having me, Days. This was super fun. Hopefully it helped for the ones that were tuned in to watch as well and listen. I guess not watch. Well, I guess we watch VODs. But hopefully it was helpful from a point of view of a caster of how I think about the game and everything too. And it'll help you all for future observing. Hmm. No worries, no worries. Hmm. Hmm.
I'm just thank you. Thank you for your time.
No worries, no worries. My pleasure, friends. All right. So I guess we'll finally give a chance for Sophie to go to bed. Um, I said 8 o'clock, but it was only 6 o'clock, so hopefully it wasn't so bad.
Yeah, I'm still awake. Haven't fallen asleep yet.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me, friends. And if there's ever anything that you want to ask, feel free to DM me. I don't have DMs available on Discord because everybody just sends me spam all the time. So just feel free to message me on Twitter, and I'll be more than happy to help you guys out. If not, yeah, just DM me on Twitter because I was gonna say add me into Discord, like the at, so that I see notifications. But I actually currently have like 1,000 notifications on Discord as well because I don't look at all these happen. It's just a bunch of like announcements every freaking time from every channel that I'm in. So I was like, yeah, I'm a boomer, man. Listen, man, you're trying to explain shit to a 37-year-old. Fuck it, I don't care. Awesome. Yeah, but see, I have to do it per Discord. That's too long. I'm in like 200 Discord channels or whatever it is. It's all good. I appreciate it though. My pleasure.